Let me tell you something, Mean Gene. You're watching Nub's Collection, a YouTube series dedicated to the catalog and review of every game in his physical media collection. You're joined by your host, the excellent, the immortal Victory Nub. That's about the worst Hollywood Hulk Hogan impersonation of all time. Good morning, good afternoon, and or good evening. You're watching Nub's Collection, a YouTube series dedicated to the cataloging and review of every game in my physical media collection. As always, I am your host, Victor Nub, and today we are looking at WWF Super WrestleMania. Developed by Sculptured Software and published by Acclaim Entertainment and released in the United States in March of 1992. So, I'd say about 10 years was a fan of wrestling. I first started watching around the time that this game actually came out. I didn't get the game because of this, but I would say that just as a fan of the product that they would put out either on a weekly basis or the pay-per-views that they would produce, I did start watching around 91, 92-ish. So I do have a bit of nostalgia for this particular era of wrestling. In particular, some of the wrestlers that we're going to see today are guys that I remember wrestling when I first started watching wrestling. Obviously, the ones that everyone recognizes probably are on this list. A couple that you might not remember as well. Hulk Hogan obviously was probably the face of wrestling in the WWF, at least for the better part of a decade. And 92 is probably when he was starting to wear out his welcome, at least with Vince McMahon. In the WWF, he would have left about 2 or 3 years after this game came out. I did find it a little bit sad when I started looking at the roster of wrestlers that are presented in this game, and there are only 10 of them, that almost half of them are dead. Just a sad reality of the profession is that a lot of these guys suffer health-related issues very early on in their lives, or at least what we would consider early, with the age that most people reach before they pass away. Randy Savage is no longer with us. Hawk and Animal of the Legion of Doom are both dead now. Earthquake has passed away. I think Sid Justice and Ted DiBiase are still alive, as is Typhoon. But all of these guys, yeah, unfortunately, if it wasn't health-related, have had other issues. I think Hawk had some serious alcohol abuse issues. Jake the Snake Roberts, unfortunately, has had a long history of drug and alcohol abuse problems that is pretty widely known. Not to mention, his health has deteriorated considerably in the last couple of years. I think he actually suffers from COPD now. So we're gonna do a couple of matches. I will say that this is not the only wrestling game that I played on the Super Nintendo. We may look at one other as a part of Rental Regrets, but what you see in this game is almost identical to what you get in all the other games. The rosters may change, but the way that the game is presented is pretty close to the same. I'm going to do my worst Howard Finkel impersonation. From Death Valley, weighing 328 pounds, The Undertaker! At this point, I think he was a bad guy, so you would have heard boo, or just silence. And his opponent, from Chicago, Illinois, weighing 277 pounds, one half of the Legion of Doom, Hulk! Unfortunately, I didn't get to say, the following contest scheduled for one fall is for the World Wrestling Federation Championship. That was kind of his big pop. I'm not going to pretend to know everything about professional wrestling because, unfortunately, I stopped watching probably in the early 2000s. Around that time, I had gone off to college, and I wasn't really watching much of any television. But, of course, most of what you could see in terms of wrestling, at that point, you could probably get the gist of on television, because the pay-per-views, while they usually had the big matches, you actually got a lot of content still in... Why aren't you running? Come on. Slam him down. Keep kicking him. Keep kicking him. Keep kicking him. Now run. Run those ropes. You missed. Dummy. Unfortunately, he doesn't do his sit-up here. Uh-oh. Oh, big kick. I'm not going to pretend to know everything about the moves in this game. I don't. Can I pin him out here? That'd be funny. Elbow drop. Get in the ring. Start running the ropes and see if I can't get a drop kick on him. Or not. Get up. Get up. So I remember my first pay-per-view that I actually ordered, or I guess my family ordered. That would have been the 1992 Royal Rumble. Now, it turns out, if you know anything about the Royal Rumble events that the WWF has had over the years, I think a lot of people actually hold the 92 Royal Rumble as one of the best. That was the one that had the first two entrants being the British Bulldog and Ric Flair in there, both for, I'd say, a good 30 or 40 minutes. That was kind of the first major Royal Rumble where two of the combatants lasted for a considerable length of time during the match. Usually the way it happened was everyone would kind of cycle in and out over the course of the match within a couple of minutes of getting in there, so that there weren't a ton of people who were staying in for 40 or 50 minutes and just wearing themselves out. Let's pick... let's do a tag team. We'll do it on easy. I'm just going to keep it easy. I'm not trying to show off my impressive knowledge of the game, because honestly, I haven't played this in 25 or 30 years. It's been a very long time. We'll just skip the entrance again. Go ahead. Anyway, that one's pretty widely remembered because Ric Flair, being one of the two guys that started the match, was actually the winner of that particular Royal Rumble. Now, was he particularly active in getting rid of wrestlers during the match? Because, you know, that's part of the whole thing, is the Royal Rumble has people coming in every 2 minutes, or at least at that time, that's how it worked. And you had to eliminate guys by throwing them over the top rope. And I think that's still the case today. And they had to touch the ground. And if they touched the ground after being thrown over the rope, they would be eliminated. Ric Flair ended up being the winner that year. Not necessarily because of how great he was doing, but mainly because of, you know, his way of, you know, cheating and taking advantage of people. And at the end of the Royal Rumble that year, I believe Hulk Hogan was, like, if he wasn't the last entrant in the Royal Rumble, he was one of the last guys. And he decided to eliminate another babyface, which is never supposed to happen. You know, they're supposed to be teammates and work together. And he eliminated, I think it was Sid Justice at that time. And there was a big, you know, heel turn at that point. Why aren't you tagging? Tag! There we go. Drop kick? Oh, he didn't drop kick. I am not getting the drop kicks to work in my favor. Drop kick! Why aren't you running the ropes? The controls here are a little bit finicky. Anyway, there were a lot of really good matchups in that particular Royal Rumble, and it was a fairly back and forth affair for a lot of guys. There were some that would, you know, get in there and get eliminated within a couple of seconds, but overall it was a very entertaining match. I know we got a whole bunch as a family. We got a whole bunch of pay-per-views after that time. I probably watched, I'd say, for another 4 or 5 years. I'd get the pay-per-view every couple of months when it came on. That was around the time when they still only had a big event every 2 or 3 months. This would have been before they started doing their monthly event, which was a shorter format called In Your House. And then eventually, around the Attitude Era, they started making... Wait, I still can't get the timing on that, right? There we go. All right, tag out. Nope, that's not the right button. Tag. Ah, crap. Oh, no! Oh, he went for the big move and landed it. You can actually break up tags here. Or, pins, rather. Uh-oh. Things aren't going my way. Get up, idiot.
1, 2.
I might lose here. No. I want to go out. Yeah, there we go. Run away! I did have favorite wrestlers. I would say that my favorite technical athlete around that time probably would have been Bret Hart. He was always very good in the ring. One of the best guys of all time to do it, honestly, because he had a wide knowledge of moves that he was capable of doing, which is not a guarantee in any sense of the word. A lot of the guys that were, you know, big name guys over the years. Oh, come on. Get over there. Ah, he's got a tag. Can I run and do a drop kick? I can't. Oh, he has a lot more health. You should now. Well, get up. Get up! Get up, you idiot! Yeah, as far as the wrestling skill, Bret Hart may be one of the best guys to ever do it. I know that was part of his gimmick, was saying that he's the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. He lived up to it. I mean, he was incredibly technically sound. As far as gimmick or just entertainment value, I would have to say that... Wow, I thought he had more health than that. Get to the top! Get it! Oh, botch city. Alright, get in there. Don't let him pin it. Oh, what are you doing? This might be over. Alright, tag out, tag out, tag out. No! Slam him! Tag! Tag, you fool! No! Get back in! Why don't you tag when I hit the button? Thank you. Yeah, as far as gimmick wrestlers, my favorite was always The Undertaker. And of course, this is the early 90s, early to mid-90s Undertaker, when he was still the quote-unquote dead man. So a lot of his shtick was pin. I think this is over.
1,
No one's getting in the ring. And
3.
Yay, I won again. A lot of his shtick had to do with the fact that he couldn't be hurt, or if he did get hit, you know, he didn't really sell it as like being in pain. If he did get knocked down, he would do his little dead man sit-up move. He wasn't the most technically skilled guy in the ring, but it was always the pageantry, the show of him coming out to the ring that entertained me the most. Let's go ahead and put together a team of... What do we want to do? Let's be the bad guys this time. I'm going to be Ted DiBiase, Sid Justice. We'll be Jacob the Snake-Up Roberts, and we'll do the Undertaker, and then they can pick whoever they want. All right, that went along most of the baby faces versus heels lines there. Yeah, he had a lot of very interesting matches. Now, it turns out his matches, for the most part during that time, were against other big men. That was usually his billing. I even remember when he kind of went from being a typical bad guy character to a good guy, because it was a match between him and Jake the Snake Roberts, where Jake was trying to determine his allegiance, and then Undertaker's retort to that was, because he was always very laconic at that point, he had very short words, was just to say, "Not yours." as in I'm not on your team. And from then on, for the longest time, he was a good guy. Now, of course, in wrestling, people flop back and forth between good and bad all the time, so eventually he became a bad guy again, and then back to good, and yada, 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 so on. Why aren't you running? Boy, some of the button prompts in this do not work. Uh-oh. Oh, that was bad. Oh, he rolled out of the way. Kick, kick, kick. Ah, he moved. All right, well, two could play that game. Sid, where you at, bud? Tag! I'm hitting the tag button. He won't tag me. Now he does. Aha, you didn't get anything. Now, I will say, and I know this was, I think this was in WCW. And I did watch WCW a little bit when the wars, the Monday Night Wars were going on. That Sid Justice, at that time, I guess he was Sid Vicious, easily had the worst wrestling injury I've ever seen. And if you know anything about wrestling, you know the one I'm talking about because it's very easy to find online. He went up to the top rope, and this is a move that he had done many times in the past, to go deliver a single leg kick off the top rope, where he would jump from the top rope, standing, and then deliver a single boot to the face of a standing opponent. Meaning that he would put all of his very large frame, all that weight, on a single foot coming down from the top rope. And he went to do this move once, and he landed on the leg like he normally did to deliver this single boot to the face, and his leg snapped. The lower part, the, what is that, the ulnar bone? Ulnar? No, tibia. Not the big bone, not the femur, the tibia. It broke, and he collapsed on the ground and went to go grab his leg, and you could see it flopping around. Oh, it was the most disgusting thing ever. No! Ted, what are you doing? I think I can change my guys. I sure can. There we go. I got Jacob the Snake up in there. Sit down. Kick him in the head a few times. So the way the moves in this game work is when you get into a grapple like that, you have to jam on the button for the move you want to perform as fast as you can. And it's kind of a tug-of-war thing where if you hit the button enough times, you'll get the benefit of the doubt on a move. Obviously, against the computer, they probably make the weighting for how fast or how many times you got to hit it higher or lower depending on the timbre of the match and the difficulty of the opponent that you set up. Come on. Ah, let me get the move. Oh, I think I'm supposed to be holding the Y button when I run here, and I'm not doing a good job of that. Get up, get up, get up. Oh! All right, time to tag out here.
1, 2.
Get him off. I gotta get out of the ring. There we go. I'm going to tag out, and you can't stop me. I don't love that the camera doesn't keep up with me running away like a coward. All right, tag. Jacob the Snake up back in the ring. I did like the bad guy version of Jake the Snake Roberts. I think there was a certain malevolence to him that wasn't cartoony, which was a big problem with a lot of wrestlers back in the day. If they were bad guys, they were typically very cartoonish. His was a little more subtle. They haven't shown a ton of wrestlers that I remember big beef between, but I do think that of my time watching wrestling, Jake the Snake Roberts and Macho Man Randy Savage had a big beef between the two of them. So that would be the one. Cool, I got it finally. Let's do it again. Go to the wall a second time. Ha 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 ha. We'll just keep doing it. Or not. All right, I finally got the running down. But not that. Now, for anyone watching this and wondering, one of the things that I absolutely have not done yet, which is a finishing move. The reason for that is there were no finishing moves in this game. Why did they make that decision? I don't know. I didn't make the game. I just know that that was not a part of it when they designed it. Now, in the sequels, which are WWF Royal Rumble and eventually WWF Raw, I think it was just Raw. It might not have been Raw's War at that point. They did actually put in finishing moves for all of the wrestlers. At this point in time, it was just, hey, oh, go for the pin. I can get the pin. That should be one of them eliminated. Survivor Series is 4-on-4, and every time you get a pin, that wrestler is eliminated from the match. So it doesn't end here. It shouldn't end here. Yeah, there we go. All right. Tag in the Undertaker. Start wailing on him. Connected! Elbow drop! These are things that the Undertaker never did. Unfortunately, all of the moves that these guys use are very generic. There is not a ton of variety in what they did. And that was the case, I believe, with both of the sequels as well. They all had a very generic move set, but the good thing about the sequels, again, is that they all had their special moves. So the Undertaker has the Tombstone Piledriver. Ted DiBiase has the $1 Million Dream, if he was in those games. I can't remember. I don't know what was Jake the Snake? Did he do... He did the DDT. That would have been in the game, although I don't think that is a move that is... Or he wasn't a wrestler in any of the future games. They did a good job of rotating guys in and out in future games, so I'm going to end this here. That's the third pin. Look at this. The Undertaker is in characteristic fashion unstoppable. He's going to wreck shop with everyone. 2 down. Now I just got to take care of Hawk and it's over. Whee! Ah! Oh, beautiful. Pummel, pummel, pummel. I need one more clean kick. It's over. Pin him. Wrap this bad boy up. This would have been the lamest ending ever because all I did was just drop kicks over and over. Oh, that's awesome. Now, the greatest match I remember seeing either on television or on pay-per-views easily would have been in the SummerSlam, and I don't remember what year this is, but they did the event in, I want to say it was Wembley Stadium, and it was the match between Bret the Hitman Hart and the British Bulldog. It was a great back and forth. Now, obviously, because they were in England, the preferred team or the preferred wrestler at that point would have been the British Bulldog. Bret Hart, even though he was a good guy at that time, they were both baby faces, was supposed to be the bad guy in this case. And the heat between these two guys at that point was the fact that Davey Boy Smith married Bret Hart's sister. And Bret Hart objected to it for whatever reason. It was a really good match, and I think it was about 25-30 minutes long, which was very impressive at that time, because matches usually ended within, I'd say, 15 or 20 minutes. They didn't go very long. But the thing that was even more impressive about that particular match, and of course you don't know about this unless you read or hear about the way that things went down in that match, is the fact that, unbeknownst to, I think, most people at that point in time, Davey Boy Smith, the British Bulldog, had a very, very significant drug problem. Like, one of the things that was causing him some serious issues, and he ended up leaving the WWF as a result of this, is the fact that he was seriously addicted to crack cocaine. Like before SummerSlam, he went out for an evening to party with his brother-in-law, Jim the Anvil Neihart, and they got wasted on crack, and unfortunately, this affected his performance at the wrestling event. You wouldn't know this if you hadn't read about it. He had not done what he was supposed to do, and at that time, as is, I think, the case with all wrestling matches, he was supposed to have a meeting with Brett to go over all the stuff that they were going to do as part of the wrestling match. You know, go over the moves, the spots, whatever they were supposed to do during the course of it. He didn't do any of that. He didn't show up for that. No one knew where he was before SummerSlam. He just kind of disappeared into a drug den and was gone until the beginning of the event. And during the wrestling match, and this is something that, again, if you're just not clued in on this, he had to ask Bret Hart what the spots were, because he didn't know. So he was getting, you know, and I think the ref may have helped as well, because this is something that, if you didn't know about this already, the reason why the ref has an earpiece in wrestling matches is, of course, because he takes cues from backstage for stuff that's supposed to happen during the match. If, you know, someone gets injured or they miss a spot, the ref will kind of try to subtly give them instruction from backstage on what they're supposed to be doing. And Davey Boy, you know, he was super high and was having some trouble getting through the match, but eventually, you know, they put the match together in a way that you wouldn't know went awry because of his addiction to crack, which is so funny to laugh about. I know it's not funny in the sense that you're laughing at someone who had a drug problem, but, I mean, let's be honest. It was a problem of his own making, because he chose to do this instead of focusing on a major event that was taking place in his home country. And he had the world's biggest pop. I mean, he came out to the ring, if I'm not mistaken, with Lennox Lewis, and Lennox Lewis is also British. So he seriously could have screwed up that entire thing because of his drug problem, and it turned out to be one of the best wrestling matches, arguably, of all time. It was an incredible match. A lot of credit there has to be given to Bret Hart, because Bret Hart is pretty widely known as not only one of the best technical wrestlers, but one of the guys that is really good at what they call putting people over, where he'll go out to the ring, and if he needs to, you know, take a couple of ugly bumps or play a bad guy to, you know, boost someone else's image, he'll do that. He's very good at it. And frankly, the result of that match is largely due to... Wow, weird. Okay, whatever. Kick! Punch, it's all in the mind. So I'd say around the time that they started doing the in-your-house events is when I stopped doing pay-per-views. And the reason for that is, unfortunately, it's something where they were charging around the same price. I believe that they were charging for most of the major pay-per-views, and the event was smaller, and it was occurring on a monthly basis. Now, obviously, at some point, they decided that it would be a better idea to make it so that the events that they were putting on, if they were going to cost, you know, a certain fee every single month, they should probably be as long as the other events, so they had to start padding them out. And that meant expanding the roster, and that's around the time that they, you know, came up with Monday Night Raw, and also eventually they did the Thursday event, the SmackDown. I don't know what day it happens now. I know they've moved it a couple of times. But, yeah, eventually they had to start expanding the roster, adding more wrestlers, getting more storylines going on so that they could support this monthly pay-per-view structure that they wanted to go with. Unfortunately, that was just too much money to pay for on a monthly basis for me or my family, so it became more a thing of watching the televised events, which of course are free, or weekly televised events, which were free, and you could get a good chunk of what was going to happen even if you didn't watch the pay-per-views, they usually just recapped what happened the week after, or the night after, I guess, because usually they're on Sundays, so you can just watch on Raw to see what happened. All right, so get in the ring. I don't think he's going to get counted out. Countouts rarely happen unless you knock him down at the last second. Come on. Take him down. Pin.
1, 2, 3.
I did watch through a good chunk of the Attitude Era. Now, we do have a game that I'm going to look at as part of my N64 collection that is also a wrestling game. That was the last one that I ever got, so that'll probably be, in addition to if I do a rental regrets for one of the other two wrestling games for the Super NES. That'll probably be the last one that we'll do for wrestling. Again, even though I get it that this is not quote-unquote a sporting event, this is entertainment, I just wasn't into sports games all that much. Oh, great. Good job, idiot. All right, get over there. Kick him. There you go. Uh-oh. Things are not going my way.
1.
That didn't go well. All right, get up. Get out of here. Oh, Jacob is getting beaten.
1, 2.
Stop it. Roll to the end. Roll like the snake you are. I don't think snakes roll like that, but whatever. Swap to Hogan. It's been a while. Oh, no. Oh, big man doing that move. That's rough.
1, 2.
Uh-oh. It might be over. I mean, for Jake. Cool. I'll get over and get that tag. Don't worry about what he's doing. What the heck? Oh, why couldn't the camera pan over to where I could see what he was doing? This is bad. This is really bad. No, it's over. He's gonna pin me.
1, 2.
I was hoping to go completely undefeated for this episode, but I don't think it's gonna happen. I'm not saying I'm gonna lose this, but I did lose a wrestler. All right, who else do I have? Oh, the Undertaker. Yeah, he started this, and he's probably in the worst shape. He did not have a good beginning to the match. No, this big man, he keeps jumping top rope. Brutal. I elbow him. If I can get him down, it's over. I just need to get him down. Oh, God, he's gonna get me again! Oh, Typhoon is wrecking me right now.
3.
I would also say early on, I also was a big fan of the Big Boss Man, but he went away for a while, and it may have been for drug-related issues as well. I'm not 100% on that. Fortunately, that was a big problem with guys. Come on! Stop letting him get these big drops on me, game.
1.
Get out of here, dick. You're the one who's supposed to be getting your butt handed to you. Let me pin him. It's over. There we go. Get out of here, jackass.
3.
I need to get that quick tag out. Now, as far as actual live events, I went to exactly 2. The first one I went to, and I will be upfront, I don't remember any of the major wrestlers that were involved in any of the matches. I remember exactly one thing about it. Tag out. There we go. The first one I remember very much for one reason only, and that was because it was the first time I was introduced to the idea of a dark match. And dark matches, if you don't know anything about wrestling, they're the matches that occur, quote-unquote, off-camera before the major wrestling matches begin. Usually it's just to help guys who are, you know, trying to get some work in, learn some moves, get some experience wrestling in front of a crowd. Those guys usually are lower profile. They often are the ones that, at least at this time, were considered jobbers, and that their main thing was they typically lost. And I think it was the only time I ever saw the Brooklyn Brawler win a match, because he was like a lifelong jobber. His big thing was he'd come out, he'd fight someone, he would lose. It could be a good guy, it could be a bad guy. His job was go out there and make someone else look good. And this live event was the only time that I think he ever won a match. And it was a dark match, so of course the world had no idea that that's what happened, but ultimately that is something that I remember specifically from seeing at a live event. Now, I don't know if it happened at this particular live event I went to, or if it happened at another one. Pick Hulk Hogan, whatever. I remember very specifically, and why I remember this over anything else, that my older sister, who I think had a little bit of a crush on a particular wrestler, if you know who Kurt Hennig is, otherwise at that time known as Mr. Perfect. She had been calling out his name, trying to get his attention most of the night, and we were only maybe 10 rows back from the ring. And she said something, and I don't remember what it was that she said, but she ended up getting his attention. And it must have been something funny, because he looked back with kind of like this raised, you know, arched eyebrow, like, what did she just say to me? And that's always stuck out in my mind about that first one that we went to. The second event that we went to sticks out in my mind for a very specific reason. And there is a very particular reason why that was the last wrestling event that I went to. The younger of my two sisters, they're both older than me, came to this particular one, and I don't know if she was at the first one or not. And when she went to this particular event, we were near where the wrestlers were entering the ring, you know, that little entryway that they would go down. And they had a match that involved the British Bulldog. Yet again, he comes up. And while he was walking down to the ring, my sister catches his eye. And he gives her a look that I don't think I need to explain to you where I'm going with this. And it just so happens that my mother was also there. And she saw the look that he gave my sister and said, "We're never going to another one of these wrestling events." Now, do I think that's something that was specifically, he was ready to take my sister backstage and, you know, rock her world? No. I think it may have just been part of his character at that point, but it doesn't change the fact that he did that, and it was to my sister, and my mom saw it and became convinced that she was going to have her precious daughters defiled if she brought them to any more wrestling matches, so that was the last one we ever went to. And again, this is probably in the era that we're looking at here today, you know, the early 90s, maybe early to mid 90s, but ultimately it was the last time we went to one. And while I know that there were a lot of things that happened after this particular era that I found very entertaining over the years, I never went back. And I know it's a lot of fun, and I know a lot of people still appreciate wrestling a lot. I just have never gone back to it. Early college, I just kind of stopped watching TV altogether, and wrestling kind of went out with it as well. Also, I would say that in the Attitude Era, at least around the time I stopped watching, there tended to be a whole lot of people who, the storylines rather, tended to follow the same routine. I'm going to rematch and then pause it so I can finish up here. Unfortunately, a lot of them had to do with the way that they did a lot of storytelling in the Attitude Era was, you know, some guy would be backstage and, you know, in the era that I started watching, most of the stuff that wrestlers did was they'd be backstage with an announcer holding a mic to their face, and they'd be cutting a promo directly to the camera in front of, you know, a backdrop that said WWF or whatever it would have said. And they made a pivot around the time of the Attitude Era where instead of doing it like that, they tried to make it seem like everything was occurring naturally. So you would have a guy sitting in the locker room, taping up his legs or his hands or whatever, and another wrestler comes in and they have a very angry conversation between the two of them. And then the camera just kind of cuts away and you assume that they just stopped staring at each other and walk away peacefully, but who knows. They kind of lean more into the soap opera-y aspect of interaction between wrestlers. And to that extent, they also started getting a little bit more sexual salty. There was a lot of stuff that usually involved, hey, your valet that brings you down to the ring, I really have the hots for her, and then I'm going to serenade her, or haha, she's disappeared and I have her in my house, ha 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 ha. And some of that stuff just was a turn off for me around that time. And I think it was kind of a reaction to that, maybe a little bit too sinister type of storytelling that caused the WWE at that point in time to lean towards what they were calling the PG era, where there wasn't a whole lot of blood. The bits that they were doing between the wrestlers were a little bit less criminal in nature, or at least the way that they were presented. And, you know, frankly, that's kind of when I stopped watching. And I'm not a prude. It's not like, oh, I can't stand watching this. It just felt like they were all the same kind of story, and it just kind of, I didn't have a taste for it anymore. Anyway, I think we've gotten a good look at this game today, so let's go ahead and wrap things up. We'll do a round of the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is, I would say, the fact that the wrestlers, you know, compared to NES versions of these characters, look very close to their actual people. I know I played at least one other WWF wrestling game before this on the NES. We're probably not going to look at it because I don't think it's any better than this one. And those wrestlers kind of looked like their actual real life counterparts. This one gets even closer to that. While it's not perfect, obviously there's only so much you can do with pixels to represent a wrestler. These are really good. Like the clothing matches for everyone, the faces, the hair. You look at a wrestler and you go, I know exactly who that is. Now, obviously, with some of them, in particular, Jake the Snake Roberts and Macho Man Randy Savage, both of them tended to wear tights that changed color scheme on a regular basis. So getting those perfect was probably going to be a little bit difficult, but they did the best they could. Also, and this is something that I think they did here, maybe not so much in the NES games that I remember playing, they actually had digitized versions of all of their entrance theme songs. And they were very close to what they're supposed to sound like. Now, obviously, it's not perfect because you were using a synthesizer to create all these songs, and they just were kind of crude MIDIs instead of what the actual songs were, played by real people, you know, instruments, singers, whatnot. They got really close to it, and you could tell that it was the right song for each wrestler. I don't know if you could say the same about that for the NES game. So those were both step-ups. The grappling system in this game is fun. You just jam on a button, depending on which one you're trying to do a move for. And if you win the tug of war, you get to perform your move. Punching and kicking has some weight to it. I do like the top rope stuff, even though it is very high risk. It does a lot of damage. You can do clotheslines, which I wasn't doing all that successfully, or I was doing mostly drop kicks. And They had different match types. Not very many. They had just a Survivor Series, one-on-one, and tag team. So they had some variety. It wasn't just one-on-one matches. The bad. No signature moves. Everyone knows the majority of the big guys' moves. Macho Man Randy Savage does an off-the-top rope elbow drop. Hulk Hogan does his leg drop. Ted DiBiase has a sleeper hold called the $1 Million Dream. Jake the Snake Roberts, DDT. Don't know if I can tell you what the Legion of Doom was. I think it was they put a guy up on one's shoulders, and then the other one clotheslined him from the top rope. I think that was what it was. I don't know what Earthquake and Typhoon did. I think Earthquake just like did a bounce off the ropes and then sat on the guy's chest. And I have no idea what Sid Justice did. It was probably just a powerbomb. But none of those are in this game. In future games, they actually circled back and put those in. But for this particular game, you just beat the guy until his health is down to nothing and then pin him, and that's it. So that kind of stinks. It would have been nice if there were more wrestlers. That's just a stock answer for any game where you're dealing with a large roster of people that would have been available around this time. You're talking the New Age Rockers, I think, were still a team. Maybe they had broken up at that point and Shawn Michaels was a solo guy. They could have put in, I think Bam Bam Bigelow was starting his career at this time. They could have put in a whole bunch of gimmick wrestlers that probably would have been fun to look at. Yeah, it felt a little shallow. Only 10 wrestlers in this game. And I know they have room for more guys because the same hardware that they used or cartridges that they used for this game, they used in the two games that came after this that had larger rosters. So they had room. They just didn't make them as part of this game. So yeah, the big thing is small roster and the lack of any signature moves. As far as the ugly, I feel like some of the button prompts didn't work as intended based on position in the ring. Trying to run against the ropes if you're right next to them doesn't work. Tagging people out didn't seem to work if I was right next to them, so it seems like there was a dead zone at the edge of the ring where you were trying to do stuff. The camera doesn't pan right when you're outside of the ring, so it's hard to follow what you're doing. If one opponent is on the outside of the ring, the camera seems to stick to them as opposed to the guy inside the ring, which is kind of obnoxious. But yeah, those are kind of little nitpicky things. Would have been nice if we could have messed with the ref a little bit, but I think that's something they introduced in a future game. I like that they have two guys down by the ring. I'm assuming that's Bobby the Brain Heenan, and next to him, I don't know who that would have been. Maybe Vince McMahon at that point? Hard to tell. But let's go ahead and give this game a score. Do our score in Randars, 1 to 10. I'm going to say, since I have advanced knowledge of what the games after this played like, this is probably a 4 Randar game, mainly because of the small roster and the lack of signature moves. Without those signature moves, the gameplay just feels kind of generic. It would have been nice if you picked Undertaker and he could do the tombstone pile driver to finish his enemies. But lacking that, everyone does the same moves. You do a body slam or the suplex or a leg drop. And these guys didn't all do the same thing. They all had pretty unique move sets that they all stuck to. And they didn't branch away from that, because if a guy was comfortable doing one move and not doing another one, he probably wasn't going to do the one he was uncomfortable with, because he didn't want to injure the guy he was working with that night. So yeah, 4 Randars. I know they get better as you go through future iterations. Not to mention, as I said before, they had a couple of different modes in this game. One-on-one, tag team, and Survivor Series. In Royal Rumble, they introduce the Royal Rumble, where all of the wrestlers on the roster eventually get in the ring, and then you have to eliminate them by throwing them over the top rope. Why wasn't that part of this game? You only had 10 guys that were going to be involved in the event, so obviously it wouldn't have been a 30-man match, but Would have been nice to put in here. The Survivor Series is a nice change as well. They put that in. If we do the rental regrets for one of the future releases, I think WWF Raw is the one we would want to look at, mainly because it also has the Royal Rumble, but it has a couple of other match types. I think there's a cage match. I'm not 100% certain on that, but easy way to find out is to play that game, obviously. But for Randars, because the series does get way better as you get further iterations, and this one feels kind of threadbare. Very generic as far as the moves. Wrestler likenesses and theme songs are nice touches, but they should have had their signature moves. That's going to do it for this episode of Nub's Collection. As always, I do appreciate each of you watching, and I will see you next time.